I think that if Thomas the Tank Engine can get it right, we need to hold everybody else to a higher standard. We need to hold producers and toy makers and movies and everybody, because we are a big chunk of the population. We are not going away. And
we're not asking for too much.
No, we just, if you're going to write our stories, please ask us about them. Please don't assume. Welcome to the Autistic Culture Podcast. Each episode, we dive deep into autistic contributions to society and culture by introducing you to some of the world's most famous and successful autistics in history.
Before we get started, a quick disclaimer on how we use the word autistic. The purpose of this show is not to diagnose the people or characters we discuss as autistic. While some may have announced being autistic, what we're sharing here is our observation of what is representative of autistic culture. It can sometimes be difficult for autistic people to celebrate our natural tendencies and traits due to the perception of autism as a disorder that needs to be fixed, a long history of damaging medical interventions to try and get us to fit in with mainstream culture, and protective masking skills many of us have developed to try to stay safe.
Whether you are autistic or just love someone who is, your hosts Dr. Angela Lauria, the linguistic autistic,
and licensed psychological practitioner Matt Lowry welcome you to take this time to be fully immersed in the language, values, traditions, norms, and identity of Autistica. Episode 22, Trains Are Autistic. So Angela, today I have a really exciting topic to talk about.
I can't wait to hear it. What are we talking about, Matt?
So this is something that I have, when we first started talking about doing the podcast, and we made all the list of all the things that we wanted to talk about, this is one thing that is very personal to me, because my son loves it. He lives this every time we play. It's something
we're
to do
talking
with
about electric towers.
Oh, well, that too.
Oh, we're talking about Pokemon. We're talking about Legos.
Also that.
We're talking about, what else do we know that Emmett loves? Chicken nuggets from McDonald's? The McDonald's guy?
He does love that. Yeah, the McDonald's dude bring chicken nuggets.
Yeah.
But today we are going to talk about our little blue friend, Thomas.
Oh,
Thomas the train.
Thomas.
My son loves trains. We have a train table. We have numerous trains. Every week we go out and we look for more Thomas stuff. We look for more train stuff. And that is what he loves to play with. And this has been a topic that has been near and dear to my heart, because as autistic people, one of the neat things about bonding with another autistic person is accidentally absorbing their special interests.
I've been there, done that. Yes. Ask me about soccer.
Exactly. And he loves Thomas so much. And I've been planning to do a Thomas episode, but just a couple of weeks ago, we finally found Bruno the Brake Car, a toy of the first ever official autistic character for Thomas and friends.
Is Bruno a new character?
He is. As of this very past season, premiered in December.
Okay, I have a 17-year-old, so my Thomas days are over, and I do not remember Bruno. I can't wait to hear about him.
Yeah, and that's the fantastic thing about this, because as we do, when you dive deep into it, you find a very, very fascinating history of all this. And I am just completely excited, and this will be the first ever 17-hour podcast dedicated to Thomas.
I can't wait. I have water. I'm good. Let's go. It's like a filibuster. It's like a Senate filibuster on Thomas.
Exactly. And so that's the thing about this, because Thomas comes from a very long tradition. So let's go back to trains in general.
Yeah, I was like, let's roll back to trains. Yes.
So the neat thing about trains is that think about how much of the way we conceive of thinking is based on trains. Like, a train of thought, a one-track mind, full steam ahead, apply the brakes. Everything about this is all train related, and it has seeped into the way that we conceptualize thinking. This is about metacognition. And so this is the thing about us, because we are monotropic people. We go on one track.
Full speed ahead, as it were.
Full speed ahead. And this is the thing. So this is actually one thing that I talk about with my clients, because we have a thing that's called autistic inertia, right? Autistic inertia is a body at rest stays at rest, a body in motion stays in motion, and we can't get started until we have all of the plans laid out. So it's like getting a locomotive, an 18-ton locomotive up to speed. But at the same time, we cannot change directions once we get started. We can't slow down once we get started. It looks manic to outside people, but that's just how our brains work.
We're going that way. We already planned that. That's where we're going. And if you pop in and say, hey, we're going to run to the store, like, no, we're not. There's no track for the store. There's a track for me finishing this project.
Exactly. So I want to start off with this wonderful article by a man named Conductor Rob. Reasons why autistic people like trains.
Wait, can we just stop? Is he an actual conductor, or has he just taken the moniker Conductor Rob? Because I love this name.
He is an actual conductor. He has made his life trains, and this article we'll link to several articles in the show notes. But this article is written in bullet points.
Okay, Rob. I see you, Rob.
As is the way of our people. And he says that trains can appeal to some with autism and give them satisfaction and enjoyment for multiple reasons, including number one, wheels. Because as you were talking about when before the show, when I was playing with Bruno and spinning the wheels,
I'm like, put down the wheels, step away from the wheels. They just keep spinning, and you could just keep spinning them.
Exactly, and that's a very fun stimming thing.
It really is.
This is the way for us. Models, because we love details. We love attending to details. We love putting the models together. We love playing with models, and this is so. No matter what someone's opinion of autism is, whether it's genetic, caused by aliens, runs the gamut.
Gut bacteria.
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah, I met someone the other day that's said that it was caused by heavy metals, and I was like,
I'm sure.
Not once has Metallica ever caused an autism.
Oh, yes, that's true. Megadeth, though.
Exactly, yeah. But this is the thing. Most people know at least one train guy. A man with $1 million model train set up in his basement.
I know a train guy.
Long before anyone ever used the word autism, there have been train guys. And I have said before that Emmett will definitely be one of those train guys that has, because again, we've got the giant train setup at home. And the other day, he was playing with his giant train setup, and he said, need another train table, need 2 train tables, go to Walmart, buy another train table, because he could not get enough. He needed more space. And he is going to have $1 million setup in his basement with all of the trains, with the electric towers. Because
some people
again,
set up a college account or a retirement account for their kids, but you're just investing in a train set. So
yes.
There's your legacy.
This is the way. This is how we do things, and that's the thing about this, because and this is another thing, because there are different specific scales, O scale, different combinations from 040 to 4444 that allows for this specificity. Because there is a uniform structure to all of this. And if you get into trains, you choose a scale and you stick with it, because you can build an entire world. One of the great things that I used to do when I lived in Lexington way before the pandemic was there is this light show at the horse park. Horse park being a popular spot for autistic people. But at Christmas, they also have a great model train setup. Also a great spot for autistic people, where all these model train people come together to make this epic model train setup. And it's something that I did for years and years and years until, the pandemic. But
Mm.
so,
So wait, what's
yeah.
in case people want to send trains for Emmett? What's his 01.044? What's his collection?
I'm not sure. We just it's the Brio scale.
Oh,
The
okay,
little
Brio.
wooden trains with the magnets.
Oh
Yeah,
yes, okay. I've seen those
yeah,
they have those at the bookstore.
yeah,
But see,
exactly.
this
Oh yes.
right? It's good. So the thing that I want to make a connection to though is Pokemon,
Oh yeah.
because with Pokemon there are first of all so many different Pokemon.
Hmm.
Um and with trains there's all these different types of train. They're not all the same. It's not like you're just
Oh no.
getting a blue one or a green one. The trains do different things, and then with a Pokemon you have their, energy levels and how they evolve, and you can make a baseball card with facts about them. Each train car has that baseball card. So we talk about data collection.
Oh yes,
And
absolutely.
so if it was just like every color of the rainbow, here's a car, they're all the same,
Yeah.
that wouldn't be fun. In the way if Pokemons were all Pikachus in every different color
Yeah.
and they all did the exact same thing, that wouldn't grab the attention of the monotropic mind.
No.
But if you can look at these are the same, but here's how they're different, and here's how I can collect data, and here's more fun, here's how I can memorize the data. So I can look at it and then rattle off all the other points. I see one data point. Let me give you all the other ones that go in this set. That to me is an experience of autistic joy when I know right now I'm memorizing all of the counties in the UK.
Oh yeah.
And it's just like being able to collect data. I have a set of data on each county, demographic breakdowns, major cities, and being able to categorize and collect data. And then we're watching I don't remember what we watched last night, something Great British Bake Off, and somebody's like, I'm from Sheffield. And I was like, great, Sheffield, here are the major universities, here's the county, here are all the things. So it looks like we're talking about trains, or it looks like we're talking about Pokemon, but we're really talking about how autistic joy is found, how we invent things as autistic people, how we create, and why it may look like to you we have a lot of trains.
Yeah. And that's the
That looks a
thing.
little kooky. How come so many trains?
And that's the big thing about Thomas, because every character in Thomas is based on an actual train type. And you can actually research and find the exact model that each character is based on. And that is fantastic. And again, as far as the information goes, trains have schedules and timetables. You can memorize the schedule and the timetable of all the trains. And that's the thing. This is another thing about order, because we live in a very chaotic world. All of this extraneous chaotic data, but trains have that order. You can set your clock by how the trains run, and that is one constant in a world of chaos. Plus,
Yeah.
unlike cars, trains go on a track. They're very neat. They're very organized. You know where the train is coming from. You know where the train is going. You know when it will be there,
Not
unless
a
it
lot of
derails and you have the
surprises.
Ohio thing.
Yeah,
But
well, that's a whole different problem. But
exactly. But that's the thing. You know everything to expect about a train. There's rhythm. They come, they drop off, they pick up, they depart. It's very soothing. Everything is ordered in all that. And it's awesome to think about all of this stuff. And this is a big reason why my son loves to go on train rides, because he loves to sit there, and Thomas is coming to our little neck of the woods in about
Aw.
2 months. So we're going to go see real life Thomas at our local train museum, where we go and he looks at all the toy trains and looks at all the model trains and rides the real train and all that kind of stuff. But that's the thing. There's so much about this autistic data hunger that we love. And
What else was on Conductor Rob's list?
about the neatness, the rhythm, and the sound. And
Yeah.
then he says that, Thomas is on track and he's organized. He's bright. He and his friends have spinning wheels. But this goes into a lot of other stuff so there's a lot of research in the UK about why autistic kids love Thomas, because this is a thing that has been noticed for years. Because did you know that Thomas the Train was invented in 1915?
No, what?
Yes.
No.
Yes. Yes. Oh, 1945. Sorry, 1945.
I
Yes.
would, if you asked me to guess a year, I would have guessed like maybe the 90s.
That's the thing, and this is the big fascinating thing. So we'll get to the Thomas list about why autistic kids love trains, because Thomas has been a part of British culture since 1945. Thomas the Tank Engine is based on the British Railway series by Wilbert Awdry that he wrote for his son Christopher, who loved trains. Because,
Interesting,
yeah,
Christopher. Hmm.
and that's so Thomas's basis is the LB and SCR E2 class.
Great.
And yeah, and it was based on a wooden push-along toy from the 1940s made by Wilbert out of a piece of a broomstick because his kid loved trains so much.
Mm-hmm.
So Wilbert wrote this book called the Railway Series, and Thomas wasn't even in the first book, right?
Okay.
But Thomas was described in the opening of Thomas and Gordon, the first story in book number 2, as and I will copy this and put it over here for you. So,
Okay.
this is Thomas.
A tank engine who lived at a big station. He had 6 small wheels, a short, stumpy funnel, a short, stumpy boiler, and a short, stumpy dome. He was a fussy little engine, always pulling coaches about. He was cheeky, too.
And that's why I got confused about that, because canonically, Thomas was built in 1915. So Thomas is over 100 years old.
So Thomas, the actual tank engine as described, is a 1915 tank engine written about in 1945.
Yes.
Which I also want to jump in. If your son is really into trains and you love your son enough that you are willing to learn everything about trains and write a book about it.
It sounds a little familiar, don't it?
I'm just saying. And this comes back to, how does autistic culture get created? Through our special interests. We get real good at shit and we change the world.
Exactly.
Hello, Thomas. Okay, we're going to take a quick break. We'll be right back. We love sharing stories of autistic culture. And if you are seeing yourself in any of these stories, and you're wondering if maybe you're one of us, or maybe you're already diagnosed or self-diagnosed, and you want to know if Matt can help you live your life better and be more authentically autistic, check out his website at mattlowrylpp.com. That's Matt, M-A-T-T, Lowry, L-O-W-R-Y, and then that LPP, it stands for Licensed Psychological Practitioner. So head on over to mattlowrylpp.com and learn more about working with my buddy Matt.
He loved his son so much, and his son loved trains so much that he loved trains, and he wrote about trains. And so the books have been published since 1945, and the first attempt to bring to television was in 1953.
No.
Yeah. And so the BBC used live-action model trains to recreate the first 2 stories from the first book, The 3 Railway Engines. They used 00 gauge Hornby Dublo models in reflection of the original illustrations, the quote, "The Sad Story of Henry." It was broadcast on June 14th, 1953, but the model derailed, and one of the operators had to come in and pick it up and put it back on there. It was considered a disaster by everyone involved, so they decided not to do any more. Okay. But the books kept on. The books kept on coming, as a train does, and in 1973, guess which famous composer wanted to make a show about Thomas the Train?
73 in England. Burt Bacharach?
Andrew Lloyd Webber.
No.
Yes.
He's
Yeah.
here, the phantom of the train station.
And that's the thing, because Andrew Lloyd Webber is a Thomas fan. He had been reading the book since he was a kid.
Ooh.
Yeah, and he wanted to write an entire show and write all the music about Thomas.
I'm assuming the producers passed on this brilliant idea.
They did, because according to the people, they quote, because Android Webber's company wanted, quote, control of almost everything, because Andrew Lloyd Webber said it was necessary to secure the investment money from America, which would be needed to pay for the animation and the filmmaking.
Okay.
But this is a thing. So anyway, the next attempt came in 1979 when British television producer Britt Allcroft was producing a documentary on the Bluebell Railway. And as part of her research, she read some of the books in the Railway series and was very entertained in which the books were written. And she said, quote, I'll copy and put this in the notes.
She said, there was something in the stories that I felt I could develop that would connect with children. I saw strong emotional content that would carry with little children's experiences with life.
Yeah, yeah. So she started working to make Thomas the Tank Engine and Friends. And she said, you know what? We definitely need trains. And the plan was to get actual scale model trains that you could buy from a store, add faces to them, tell a story. And she said, you know what would be great? If we got a Beatle to do this. Because if we had a Beatle to narrate, it would be fantastic.
Okay,
so she would,
John, Paul, George, and Ringo Beatle, not
exactly,
a VW
yeah.
Bug. Yes,
exactly.
Okay.
So she went to Paul McCartney, and Paul McCartney said, ha, 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 no, why would you ever expect to get a Beatle for this? And then she went to George, and George said, oh yeah, that'd be great.
Okay, I'm in.
Yeah. So, no, not George. Sorry, Ringo Starr.
I knew it was going to be Ringo.
Yeah.
I'm like, this is going to end up at Ringo. It has to end up somehow with Ringo.
Ringo's always the one. So in 1984, that's when on ITV, the first Thomas series premiered, and Ringo was the narrator. And eventually it came over to the US, and they decided to add some Shining Time station segments, and Ringo played Mr. Conductor. And he was a big part of it, starting in 1989. And then from 1991 to 1993, George Carlin replaced him as Mr. Conductor.
Love it.
So George Carlin...
Everybody needs to work.
Yeah, that's the thing. George Carlin, one of the most influential people and author of the, 7 words you can't say on television, became the host for a magnificent children's television show, which you wouldn't expect.
All right.
So, yeah. And then eventually, Alec Baldwin played Mr. Conductor in the movie, and then he went on to be Mr. Conductor on the show for several years.
That was around my kids' age.
Yeah.
We were in the Alec Baldwin era.
Yeah. So anyway,
so now who's your conductor?
Well, that's the thing. They've changed formats now because I'm glad you brought that up, because the Britt Allcroft company, the woman who got Thomas onto the show, changed its name to the Ghislaine Entertainment, which was purchased by Hit Entertainment, which is a subsidiary of Mattel.
Okay.
So Mattel said, you know what?
People.
Yeah, we want to sell a ton of Thomas toys. So they bought the company that makes Thomas. And these days, it's exclusively an animated series that doesn't have any live action segments whatsoever. Oh. And you can actually, they actually record 2 versions, one in England and one in the US. So you have British English and American English. So some of them have the traditional English accents, and some of them have American accents. And this is the neat thing about this, because we're just on the 2nd season of this new Thomas and Friends version. But this is why we come into this, because in the 2nd season, they introduced Bruno the Brake Car.
Okay.
Bruno the Brake Car is canonically autistic. Bruno the Brake Car is played both in England and America by 2 autistic boys.
Ooh, I'm excited about that.
Bruno the Brake Car is written by autistic writers.
What? This
Yes,
sounds so thoughtful.
it is. It is. You remember back when we talked about Julia from Sesame Street and how
Yeah.
ASAN, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, had a major role in developing her. Mattel worked with ASAN for 3 years, and all sorts of autistic representatives, autistic advocates, autistic authors, and we're going to get to all of these in just a minute,
Awesome.
about how to develop Bruno to make him an authentically and delightful autistic representation. Because, so according to studies, 58% of autistic parents reported, 58% of parents in April
Parents of
2007
autistic kids.
said that Thomas was a character their child enjoyed. One person said, Thomas and Friends is 100% responsible for getting my child talking, because their child was echolalic and would repeat Thomas.
Right.
And about a third of parents reported that their children were able to learn basic facial expressions from the characters, as all of Thomas's friends have easy to read expressions. They are either happy, sad, or angry. So here is a list that was compiled by the National Autism Foundation and National Autism Society in England about why autistic kids might like Thomas. So this is a list of all of the autistic traits for Thomas.
Yeah. Okay. So calm, clear narration of the stories. Clear and exaggerated signposts to signal changes. Oh, that's like the visual. Give me the visual of what's happening. Easy to follow, predictable storylines. Still backgrounds and scenery. Why do you think that one is? Still backgrounds and scenery. Something about interoception?
Easier to process without all the extra sensory data, because you have the clear focus. You're not distracted by background data. It's all about the here and now, and you can. It cuts out all the static.
Interesting. I wonder if that's why I can never watch fight scenes. I can never figure out who's hitting who when. I'm just like, tell me who won at the very end. Okay, bold colors, ease of recognition of characters. I appreciate that. Exaggerated, easy to read facial expressions. So good. Accuracy of the models. So talk about that one.
Well, that's the thing. Like we talked about, Thomas is based on an actual train. Percy is an actual train. Gordon is an actual train. You can get to know the characters. You can know the trains that they are based on. You can build them yourself if you so choose.
Ah, so good.
Yeah.
And you could just go deeper and deeper and layers because it's real. If it was fake, even if it was like accurate within the fake world, it's hard to go deep unless it's like you can there's obviously research out there unless you create it like Pokemon.
Exactly.
Predictable roles played by various characters, aka the opposite of my life, especially with other children who are the least predictable beings on the planet.
Exactly.
And the collectible nature of things, which Mattel is delighted to serve the autistic market, because the autistic children will force their parents to buy them all, and Mattel will get rich and roll around with champagne and Monopoly boards.
Yeah, that's the thing. Every week, my son and I go out looking for new Thomases, and every once in a while he'll want to get another Thomas. I'll have to say, "No, you've already got that one at home," and he'll go, "Ah!" Because he loves collecting the Thomases. And that's the thing, because as the stereotype says, we love lining stuff up. What better to line up than a train? Because that's how trains work. You have to line up the train cars. It's so organized. And that's the thing about my son and his train table. He will put every single car he has all the way around the train table to where it's too long to actually move, because he wants to put them all together in a nice order. And his little universe is so ordered and so collectible, with so many colors and so much variety. And he is a tiny little god of this world of trains.
And that's why you need to buy him another train table.
Exactly. Yeah. He's made a very clear argument. So for a 7-year-old, he wins the debate. So that's where Thomas and Friends All Engines Go comes in, this new incarnation. And again, they consulted with ASAN, and they consulted with the people that we're getting ready to talk about, to create Bruno the Brake Car. And this is a synopsis of Bruno, the character.
All right. Bruno, voiced by Chuck Smith in the US and Canada and Elliot Garcia in the UK, is a red American brake car that loves routine and hates surprises. He was first introduced in season 2 and is the first character in the franchise to be, you said earlier canonically, but this actually says first character in the franchise to be explicitly autistic.
Oh yeah, they make a very very this is and this is a neat thing because all the Thomas characters know that he's autistic. He says that he's autistic, and all the characters accept him and enjoy him for being autistic because I've watched a few of the episodes and they are very good episodes because he flaps. He has his little rails on here that he flaps. He has a little light on here that changes colors to show which emotion he's feeling. When he's overstimulated, he has great big puffs of steam that come out and put on headphones so he can avoid the sound. And he works as a brake car to counter the other more rambunctious trains, because if there's a train that's reckless, he goes against that and pulls backwards to keep the train nice and steady to deliver the cargo safely. His way of working with the world makes him a necessary asset to the trains, because otherwise the merchandise will get destroyed. The trains might derail. One time there was an incident where an overactive train caused a cave-in, but he was able to get out of it. And he is a necessary part of the team, and they respect that because that's who he is. So this is Mattel's official press release for Bruno.
Okay, so Mattel says we're going to make lots of money. No. Bruno is a joyful, pun-making brake car. He is great at his job and keeps big, heavy cargo steady with his strong brakes, a vital role in Thomas and Friends. All engines go. Bruno rolls in reverse at the end of the train, which gives him a unique perspective on the world. Detail-oriented, Bruno enjoys schedules, routine, and knows where all the tracks lead on Sodor. Bruno has stairs and a lantern on his bright red exterior that indicate his emotional state, moving when he is excited or cautious. Bruno's best day is one spent with friends who love him and respect him for who he is, just as he loves them back. Through his on-screen presence, Bruno's rich friendships and important work introduces audiences to a positive neurodivergent role model. Together with key partners, Mattel carefully curated Bruno's character to ensure an accurate fictional representation of an autistic child in the world. Zoe Gross, the director of advocacy at ASAN, the Autistic Self-Advocacy Network, says, quote, "The most important aspect of Bruno's development was getting autistic input, talk to actually autistic people, throughout the process of creating the character and his interactions in the world. It was great to be able to contribute to that as part of a team of consultants from ASAM. Autistic people have been involved in all aspects of creating Bruno, from us as consultants to writers on the show and Bruno's voice actors. This makes Bruno ring true as an authentic autistic character. I hope that Bruno will provide viewers with meaningful examples of inclusion in everyday life." Experts from ASAN and Easter Seals, Southern California, as well as writers and autism advocates Daniel Scher-Strom and Aaron Likens, leverage years of experience dedicated to understanding autism and respectfully and artistically creating an accurate on-screen representation. Through their hard work, dedication, and care, Bruno opens the door for global audiences in a way Thomas and Friends has never done before.
It's wonderful. And this is a neat thing because you can go now and watch episodes of All Engines Go on YouTube. You can watch both the US version and the UK version. And Bruno is delightful in both versions because Bruno is authentically autistic. Bruno has the autistic accent that we talk about. The monotone, disjointed, pedantic speech, tangential conversation, difficulty modulating breathing as he speaks. He stims while he talks. He avoids the eye contact. He gets excited and gets a little fidgety. And again, it is an authentic autistic character. It's an authentic representation of an autistic character written by autistic people, played by autistic people. And it is one of the finest representations of autism in media. And
We're like so easily pleased. We got some criticism for an episode we did a few weeks back about Wednesday, and not everybody was happy with our analysis because there are a lot of autistic people, and we did try and represent their voices, but there are a lot of autistic people who do really like Wednesday's representation. But I think this is a great example of all the stuff they could have done. It wouldn't have been that hard. They paid for consultants, they paid for writers, they paid for actors. Like all these fees were still there. It's not like they invented something here.
yeah,
And a Wednesday, if they really wanted to represent autistic culture as part of the Addams Family series, whatever franchise, they could have done these things. I bet it didn't cost that much more or take that much longer to do it the right way.
yeah.
So we didn't explicitly say that in the Wednesday because I was too annoyed. But this is what I'm saying. Just like do this. This isn't that hard.
Yeah. They put in the effort. They walked the walk. They got and one of the neat things about this is that Daniel Sherstrom, the autistic writer, autistic advocate, big contributor to this, when writing the show, made sure that there were even autistic women involved.
Crazy talk.
Yeah, because he knows that there's an overrepresentation of autistic men in media, because that's what the stereotype is, and he wanted to have that representation. So just knowing people in the autistic community, knowing people who understand this kind of stuff, getting these people on board, getting accurate consulting, it makes such a world of difference.
And if you don't, we can see it. Like
Yes.
that was our point. Isn't Wednesday is good or bad or has autistic features or doesn't? It's just like we can look at this and say this is not autistic culture. This is a bunch of holistic people and neurotypical people guessing what autism might be like. We can sense it. We sensed it from the trailer, like before we even watched it. Like it's like, I don't think you asked autistic people. We can see it.
That's the reason I still haven't watched it. I confess it's on my to-do list, but I love Tim Burton. We'll be talking about him at some point. As a matter of fact, I keep talking about Tim Burton, but I keep bumping him for like Bruno because I get excited.
I jumped in on, I'm obsessed with Sherlock Holmes, and so what's Tim Burton's muse? Helena Bonham Carter. Who I think or former muse.
That and turn of the century German impressionist cinema.
Yes. But she was the mother she was like Sherlock Holmes's mother in this show, movie Enola Holmes.
Oh, really?
Yeah. And I watched it the other day. I'm like, this is going to be some good autistic shit. We're going to do no, incorrect.
And that's a fascinating thing.
I'm like, you had so many opportunities, but no.
And that's an interesting thing because, oh God, who plays Enola Holmes? Millie Bobby.
Bobby Brown. She's great.
She strikes me as autistic too, because I've seen the interviews. I've seen people complain that she's rude, that she's direct. There was an interview on Letterman where I think it was Letterman where she was jumping all over David Harbour when she was much younger and not doing the personal space stuff. And it just seems like, again, that's a trait. But again, playing Enola Holmes, one of the Holmes kids, it seems like it fits. But anyway, that's the thing. All of this, because again, while we are not a monolith, while we are not universally represented by all things, while we are not all of us are brake cars, we do have a lot of traits, and we see ourselves there. I've always referred to Big Bang Theory as an autistic minstrel show because it purports to be sort of autistic with Sheldon, but really, really misses the mark and feels offensive in many ways.
I agree.
And without that authentic representation, without that authentic input, without that authentic portrayal, it seems like they there's okay, so this is the problem with autism media. Oftentimes autistic characters are there as a foil for the main character so that the main character can feel good about themselves for helping a poor autistic character. They are a martyr-alistic that say, "Ah, yes, this poor autistic character has no friends," or like Wednesday, doesn't have a boyfriend, so we need to fix her.
Right. That's your
And
makeover.
yeah, but this is the with Thomas and Bruno. Everybody knows who Bruno is. Everyone appreciates Bruno's differences. Everyone just knows that that's how Bruno is, and that's what he brings to the table. And
Right.
this is makes the difference between token representation and
Mm,
authentic representation,
so key.
because because Bruno, it very well could have been just an addition to the show. They could have consulted with Autism Speaks, and Bruno could have showed up and said, "I'm sad because I'm weird and don't have friends. Won't someone like me?" And Thomas hitches himself to Bruno and drags him around the entire time so that he
Great.
can do that. But no, they chose the right way. And that means so much to me.
So
That
much.
means so much to me as an autistic person. That means so much to me as the parent of an autistic child. I have gotten 3 copies of this toy so that he has one here, one in his grandparents' house, and one to put on my wall of autistic heroes, because every coded character that gets an action figure or merchandise in some way, I keep in the box and put it on a wall for the Hall of Heroes so that he knows that there's representation out there and he can see himself in these characters.
Yeah.
And so this is what Daniel Scherstrom said about this authentic representation.
Underrepresented kids, including neurodiverse kids, should see themselves celebrated in stories and play. Thomas and Friends has a strong affinity in the autistic community, so including an autistic character is an organic validation of our fans. Thank
Yeah.
you.
And this, on the topic of effective representation, he says this.
He does a lot of little things like flaps his stares, like many autistic people clap their hands when they get excited or anxious.
Yeah, and they could have done some stereotypical character to check a diversity checkbox and call it a day, but they've been really dedicated to getting it right. Bruno is me, says Daniel, when I was a child. The way he wants to help but doesn't always know how. The way he's interested in something, he learns everything. And that's the thing about the timetables and the tracks. And
That's
he
awesome.
knows Sodor back and forth. When an impulsive train goes off and gets lost, he knows where they are because he's memorized everything. So he is
Hmm.
this walking encyclopedia of knowledge. And they say, "So, how do we get out of this mess?" And he's, "I've got an idea." And so Daniel says it's either a character who is super savant and able to do everything perfectly,
Right.
or totally helpless and needs to be pitied. Bruno is an everyday kid with quirks and strengths like everybody else.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say about it is like, it doesn't mean if you have somebody on your team at work or in your family or whatever who's the break, it doesn't mean you never give them feedback. Like,
Yeah,
it doesn't, like, that's not the point here. And I'm sure it's not just a Bruno celebration fest. There's going to be conflict, there's going to be issues where two people, Bruno has one plan, somebody else has another plan. It's about seeing the strengths of Bruno, like what monotropism does for our knowledge, what our ability to research does that you don't have, and then being able to make accommodations to get the full benefit of that upside and give feedback that's not saying, could you please be a different person? Which,
exactly.
the feedback I got growing up was, you would be so amazing. Like, you are the smartest person I've ever met. You're such a creative thinker. You're so incredible. But your personality is really rough. Like,
Yeah.
you would be amazing if you could change who you were. And I believe that. When Miss Miller pulled me into the hallway in 8th grade, she's like, "You're the best writer I've ever known as an English teacher, but your personality is going to stop you from going anywhere in life." And
Uh,
I internalized all that. Like, that
yeah, well,
sounded
yeah,
accurate to me. I knew that, and I'm sure Bruno knows he's good at knowing the maps. Like, no one could have told me you're a bad writer.
yeah,
I wouldn't, I knew it. Bruno knows the maps. You can't tell him you don't know the maps. But when somebody said, but you have a terrible personality, so you're not going to be successful, that seemed equally true. I had
Yeah.
just as much evidence for that. And there were no other voices in, not that in 8th grade I would have been watching Thomas the Tank Engine, but there were no other voices in the culture that said to me, like, oh, maybe it's not that you have a bad personality. Maybe your brain just works differently. And we should take some time to understand how to work with your strengths.
Yeah. And on that note, he also says this.
There were no autistic characters in the media when I was a kid. I didn't know many autistic people. You feel like you're weird and different and need to change. I thought others shared if I thought others shared my experiences, that would have helped a lot. Me too, Daniel
Yeah.
Shalstrom.
Yeah. Uh,
Thank you.
yeah.
Mm.
That's the thing, because everybody has strengths, everybody has weaknesses. There will inevitably be interpersonal differences where you learn and you grow. But if someone says, yes, there's this fundamental thing about you that will prevent you from being successful because you're not like me, that is detrimental. That's damning, especially for a kid, especially for, the target age for Thomas,
Right.
because the kids who watch Thomas need to know that they do have a place in the world, that they do have acceptance, that they can have friends, that everybody can appreciate each other's differences. There might be kids who are more impulsive. There might be kids who are less. There might be kids who are outgoing. There might be kids who I don't know,
Put the
like
brakes on.
hats. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We need to know that we are part of this grand picture of all of the Thomas characters you can line up and put on the train tracks. We need to know that we have a place on those train tracks.
Yeah.
And this is why it's incredibly important to have accurate representation. Because like we said, when we have that representation and it doesn't feel genuine, we feel it. We feel like we're not part of the conversation. We feel like someone says, oh, yes, token representation, checking off a diversity checklist, we're there. And this brings us to the final takeaway from that.
The biggest takeaway, I hope the kids get: be cool, accept other people, and try and learn from one another. As long as they get that core message, I think that's all we really need. So complicated, Daniel.
Yeah, yeah.
Be cool, accept other people, and try and learn from one another. Revolutionary request from the autistic community.
Exactly. And I think that if Thomas the Tank Engine can get it right, we need to hold everybody else to a higher standard. We need to hold producers and toy makers and movies and everybody, because we are a big chunk of the population. We are not going away. And
we're not asking for too much.
No, we just, if you're going to write our stories, please ask us about them. Right. Please don't assume. Yeah, so yeah, I am ridiculously happy that one of my son's favorite things accepts him in their community, and I'm happy to include Bruno as one of our people, or two.
Hero Bruno.
Yeah.
And does Emmett like Bruno, by the way?
Oh, he loves him. Yeah, yeah. He's a brightly colored box.
Yeah. Okay. So hard. What's there not to like?
Yeah.
But in some ways, like, it's kind of cool if it's just like at some point boring to have autistic heroes, just like we have holistic heroes everywhere.
Yeah.
So yeah, someday we'll be boring. Thanks for listening to the Autistic Culture Podcast. We'll be right back.
When autistic people find a special interest, they go deep and have a lot of knowledge, even if they don't have that formal education background to go with it. If you want to capture your spin in a book, check out Angela's work at differencepress.com, differencepress.com, and find out more about becoming an author and establishing your credibility with a book. What was your favorite part about being autistic this week?
Okay, I have a fun one for you.
Oh, good.
I don't like showers. I know that's weird. I'm an adult woman and I'm not supposed to say that, but
that's actually a common thing for our people. But go on.
I actually also don't like baths. What I don't like is being dry and then being wet.
The transition
and then being
part.
Dry again. I don't mind the shower. I don't mind not showering, but the getting into the shower and getting wet, highly unpleasant. Getting out of the shower, cold air, wet body, don't like.
That's
Don't
the
like
autistic inertia. That's the process complexity. That is the way.
can't, don't want it. So many fights growing up during the preteen years when I am sure there were good reasons for me to take showers that I did not take that my mother had to endure. And I created a system probably, I don't know, maybe by college, in high school, by college. And so I have a system that makes taking showers that I've had for like 30 years, that makes taking showers tolerable.
Ooh,
So I have a time I do it. I have a process. I have an extraordinarily specific order. Everything has to go in the order. Everything has to be lined up. The shampoo bot, all the products have to be from the same brands. I have a list of brands. They have to be turned face out so that they look like it's store merchandise. And uh, this is what makes it possible for me to make that transition. And I don't change it. But it
yeah.
is very hard when I go to like, if I'm doing an overnight trip and I can't really take your supplies. So I'm like using shower stuff at a hotel and it's none of it's right. It's not lined up. It's the wrong way. Sometimes it has the wrong smells. They try and do these like masculine smell or like Irish Spring. And then like my whole day is ruined because I like, so I need like my smell. I need my thing. Anyway, after decades, I have added a new step to my shower process.
Ooh, tell us.
It is everything. I am so excited. So, I've seen these things. They're called like bath zoomers. You put a ball in the bath. It's like a water softener, like kind of like bubble bath, and the thing like zooms around. And they have them for little kids. But they now have something similar. I think it's probably made with baking soda, and they're called shower steamers. And you put this disc just on the floor under the shower, and the baking soda hits it, and it like bubbles up. So
Fascinating.
I have these shower steamers. I bought all of them
Of
because
course.
I had to find the brand I would like. So
As you
now I have
do.
lots of gifts. So I had to buy every scent from every company. And then I had to smell them all in a scientific process. I have selected my favorite company. I really hope they don't ever go out of stock, but I will buy crates full because I have like my company and the right smell from that company. But get this, it gets better. First of all, it's an amazing smell. So I hate most smells except for when I love smells. So I mostly avoid smelling, and I always have a pocket full of posies so I can put my hand into. Do you know that's what a pocket full of posies is for?
Oh, yeah. To keep from smelling the dead.
Yeah, you're walking by the dead people and it smells. I always have a pocket full of posies. What that is for me is I take a scarf and I spray it with my favorite perfume. And then I can always put the scarf up to my nose as a pocket full of posies, which I do 15 times a day. So,
As you do.
but when I love a smell, I really love a smell. So I love this smell. Autistic step number 1. Autistic step number 2. This is the mind-blowing one. The shower steamer dissolves, right?
Mm-hmm.
Because it's like baking soda and the water hits it. It times my shower.
Oh, that's neat.
Oh
Oh,
my
I
God.
like the structure.
I get it. And it's so I had to get the right size and the right flavor and the right scent and the right brand because it has to be the exact amount of time for my routine.
I like that. Oh, that goes back to the timetables and the schedules and
Right.
everything running like a clock. That once you have that, you have everything.
I have everything. So literally for the last 3 days since I figured this out, I've been looking forward to taking a shower. Usually I put it off for like an hour. I get coffee. I write another journal entry. I'm like, maybe I'll pull a tarot card and see what my fortune is for the day. I'll read my astrology. Like I will do anything to put off taking a shower. And now I'm actually excited about it because it smells good and it's timed perfectly. And then I win a prize. I've like gamified it. I get a dopamine hit when I can end at the exact time my shower steamer ends.
This is the kind of advice that parents of autistic kids need, because punishing kids for being dirty does not work, but finding something that makes it enjoyable does.
Yeah. I did it.
That's
for
fantastic.
me. I parented me. What an amazing gift. I know we have a lot of parents that listen to the show because y'all write to us, but like I'm not mad at my parents. They didn't know. I was a child of the 80s. This was not a thing. But what a different person I would have been if instead of being yelled at nonstop to take a shower, and like my mom would say, you have a rat's nest in your head. And like, it was always that I was smelly. I was the smelly one. And like, how different if this was something we just explored together. And she didn't have those tools. Again, not mad, not hating, but parenting myself this way felt so good. And then sharing this and knowing maybe a parent will go on a scientific exploration with their child who hates showering as much as I did.
I like that. I like that a lot.
So that's my fun story for the week.
Very nice. That is the way we do things in Autistica.
Yes. And meanwhile, since you're in Autistica, visit the land of Bruno at the new Thomas and Friends All Engines Go. Check that out. We'll put some links in the show notes. Thanks, everyone.
Have a good one. Thanks for listening to the Autistic Culture Podcast.
We hope you enjoyed today's episode. And remember,
no one ever changed the world by being like everyone else.
You can find out more about writing your book with me at differencepress.com. That's difference, DIFFERENCE, press, PRESS.com.
Or getting a psychological evaluation or consult with me at www.mattlowrylpp.com. That's MATT, Matt Lowry, LOWRY, LPP, as in licensed psychological practitioner.com.